Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Run in the Paint recap. We've got some Game 2s to talk about here from Monday night, a couple of Game 2s occurring, and we had a couple of great games that came down to the wire to talk about here today. So let's get right into it. First up with the Eastern Conference game, we had the Detroit Pistons taking Game 2, defeating the New York Knicks 100-94 in Madison Square Garden to even up the series, at one game apiece. And this was a game where I'll tell you what, this seemed like it was a lot of deja vu from what we saw in Game 1 on Saturday, where the Detroit Pistons came into the game and looked great from the very start, like they were ready for the moment once again. Didn't look phased. A lot of the younger players who were playing in their second playoff game after, obviously Game 1, looked a lot more comfortable, specifically Cade Cunningham. He was way better in this game than he was in Game 1, even though he had a very good stat line in Game 1 with like 21 points, 6 rebounds, and 12 assists. He just looked a lot more comfortable in this game, finishing with 33 points and 12 rebounds on 11 of 21 shooting. Man, he was just superb in the first half, making a ton of, tough mid-range shots, attacking the basket. He had that one incredible fast break where he did behind the back and then a slam dunk. He was spectacular in this game. He was the best player, on the floor for the Detroit Pistons, as the case for most games. But something that was fantastic for them in this game, and probably the biggest reason they were able to take care of this victory, was the incredible rebounding numbers. Oh my goodness gracious. You take a look at their starting lineup, they had 3 players that had at least 12 rebounds. Cade Cunningham with 12, 13 for Tobias Harris, 13 for Jalen Duren. And Jalen Duren's work on the offensive glass was huge. He only grabbed 4 offensive rebounds, but all 4 of them were huge. And it's felt like every single one resulted in a second chance opportunity that converted for the Detroit Pistons. So the way that they played physically, physical on the defensive end and just playing well on offense with Cade Cunningham scoring and Tobias Harris, again, having a good game. It felt very similar to Game 1, where they were up by double. They actually got up by double digits in this game, up to a 15-point lead in the third quarter. But then the New York Knicks started to make a run. It wasn't a 21-0 run like we saw in Game 1, but it was a good run where the Pistons didn't score for a good 5 to 6 minutes. They didn't make a field goal, and it was because New York had just pushed up the intensity on the defensive end, and they were knocking down shots at the other end. Jalen Brunson had 37 points in this game on 12 of 27 from the field. 9 for 11 from the free throw line is going to be the thing that I'm sure everyone is talking about here today, about how he was foul baiting in getting to the free throw line. Look, if you're the New York Knicks and you're Jalen Brunson, who is a physical point guard, I really love the way he plays. You're in this series against a Detroit team that is known for how physical they are on the defensive end, and when it comes to crashing the glass and just, when you're trying to penetrate, you're going to feel a Piston defender. So if you're a guy like Jalen Brunson, why not try to use that to your advantage and use that to the Pistons' disadvantage? Use their advantage against them, basically, and just try to draw fouls and get to the line. And he did a decent job of that, got 11 free throws, and that was so important because of just the free throw disparity. Detroit had 34 free throws compared to just 19 for New York. And to start, it was like 20-2 or 20-4 as far as the free throw advantage that the Pistons had on the road. So New York, anyways, were able to respond. They were able to tie the game up, actually, at 94 after trailing by 15. But steady veteran Dennis Schroeder made the go-ahead three-pointer with under a minute to go that really did the job there. He had 20 points in this game off the bench. He was fantastic. He was such a good pickup for the Pistons at the deadline, especially with the Jaden Ivey injury, just to have a guy that can play with Cade Cunningham. They both played together to close out the game, and for a large portion, they were on the floor together. And it was so important for Schroeder to have that type of game with Tim Hardaway Jr. and Malik Beasley both struggling shooting from the floor. They combined to go for 2 for 17 from the field, 1 for 14 from 3. And normally, if you're the Detroit Pistons, who, are not a crazy offensive team or a crazy three-point shooting team, It's when it's those guys leading the way. If those guys are going, what I just say, 1 for 14 from three, normally you're not going to win the game when those guys are shooting like that. And as a team, you shoot 6 for 27 from three. But the reason they were able to be in the game is because their defense allowed them to hold the Knicks to bad 3-point shooting. They were just 10 for 35 from three, and no easy looks either. The looks that Mikal Bridges got, at least in the first three quarters, they were decent looks, like in transition. In the fourth quarter, he got some looks that were open that he just couldn't convert, including the potential game-tying three there in the final seconds there, where the Knicks had a chance to go for the tie after Schroeder had made his three-pointer, but Mikal was unable to get it to go. Karl Anthony Towns, just 10 points, only 11 shots. I believe he didn't even make I don't even think he scored in the second half of this game. Let me take a look here. Yeah, that's right. Played 19 of the 24 second half minutes, and Towns did not score. He only took 3 shots. OG Anunoby, a guy who has played great for the Knicks in the second half of the season, only got up 10 shots, and he's a guy that has been really good for them shooting, as I just said. But with the 10 shots that he got, most of them were at the end of the shot clock, and the Knicks needed him to go to work and create a tough shot. And he actually made a bunch of them for the most part here. He's been very impressive for them. But across the board, very impressive response here by the Detroit Pistons for uglying the game up and just crushing the Knicks on the glass. They out-rebounded them 48-34. And when Mitchell Robinson was not on the floor for the Knicks, because Mitchell Robinson had a great game on the boards, it was a struggle. Detroit kept getting great second chance opportunities, and that allowed them to gain that separation throughout the game. So it was very impressive the way that they were able to, respond in that game, trying to find their second chance points. It was even at 11, but just the fact that the Pistons were able to get those second chance opportunities, so important, for a team that, again, outside of Cade Cunningham and those 3-point shooters, not the craziest on the offensive end. So the more possessions you can get to generate a shot, the better. And also trying to ugly up the game is important for this Pistons team. So a very impressive response here in game 2 for the New York Knicks. If I were them, a little bit worried as we go forward in this series, as the series will now shift to Detroit for games 3 and 4. Of course, the Pistons in this game win their first playoff game in 17 years, their first playoff win since 2008. And, really, when you take a look at this, the way that these first 2 games have gone, heavily dominated by the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons have been the better team throughout the first 2 games. In game 1, they had that 8-point lead a few minutes into the fourth quarter. Then New York went on that 21-0 run to blow up in the game. But that, to me, was just the lack of playoff experience in your first playoff game at Madison Square Garden for a lot of those Pistons players. And it got to them. And I feel like that's really where the Knicks were able to get the separation in that game. But overall, outside of that, we'll call it the final 8 minutes of the game, the Detroit Pistons were the better team in game 1. We saw them do the exact same thing here in game 2. They actually played even better. They made great adjustments. Cade Cunningham was better. They had a 15-point lead in the third quarter. And this time, when the Knicks made their run, the Pistons were able to respond and end up winning the game because of the defense and forcing the Knicks to take tough shots down the stretch in the final minutes. And Dennis Schroeder was able to make the big shot at the end of the game. So going into the 2 games in Detroit at Little Caesars Arena, going to be the first time that they host a playoff game in 6 years. And, the first time in a long time, maybe since those late, Cade Cunningham, or not Cade Cunningham, Chauncey Billups, Tayshaun Prince, Rip Hamilton, Ben and Rasheed Wallace teams, where the Pistons can go into a home playoff game thinking we're coming in here to win this game and we have a legit shot. The previous times that they've hosted a playoff game in between these 17 years where they haven't won a playoff game, it was your 2019 Pistons with an injured Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond against a very good, 60-win Milwaukee Bucks team as an 8th seed. Don't really have a shot there. And then you have 2016. You're going up against the Cleveland Cavaliers with LeBron and Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love. And that was a similar position to this current Pistons team, their first time in the playoffs. But this team is coming into game 3 with momentum. They have been the better team through the first 2 games. They're going to be coming in with a lot of confidence, and that Pistons crowd is going to be ready to go. So New York is going to have to be careful with these 2 games in Detroit here because, again, Pistons have been the better team, and they even were able to win this game without, maybe their most physical player, Isaiah Stewart, who had to miss the game due to injury. So New York's got to be careful. I'm excited to see how they will respond with the challenge because those guys have been there before, the New York Knicks. I'm excited to see how Karl Anthony Towns will play to start off game 3 because, played great game 1, obviously a stinker here in game 2, not scoring in the second half. But we've seen this from Towns in playoffs before where he doesn't always get the amount of shots that he should for an all-star starter, for an all-NBA player that he is. There's no reason that he should be taking 11 shots and only 2 threes and only 3 shots in the second half when he nearly played the entire second half. Inexcusable, for that type of performance. But we'll see how the Detroit or the New York Knicks can respond in game 3. Very excited for that game from the Little Caesars Arena. Let me know in the comments down below, what are your thoughts about this Knicks-Pistons series so far? Do you think the Knicks can bounce back, or have the Pistons been the much better team, and can they take care of home court in these next couple games, or can the Knicks respond? This has definitely been a very intriguing series. But moving on to another intriguing series, the best series so far, the Clippers and the Nuggets. We get our second straight thrilling game that came down to the final seconds. But in the end, the LA Clippers, another road team, tying up a series 1-1. Clippers get the victory 105-102. And you see right there the numbers, the top performances in this game. Kawhi Leonard. Oh my goodness, man. Dude, 39 minutes, 39 points, missed 4 shots, and I feel like most of the misses were in and out, and all the makes were straight cash. He was locked in this game. He was absolutely incredible. It didn't matter if the Nuggets sent 2 players to try to, get the ball out of his hands. He was getting up a good shot over the contest. He has such a, high release. And he just drilled shots all game long. He was absolutely fantastic. And him playing this well really was the difference in this game because he was the best player on the floor. Even though you take a look at the Nuggets side of things, you get a triple-double from Jokic, 26, 12, and 10. Jamal Murray, 23 points on 9 of 17 shooting. But for Jokic, one of his worst playoff performances in his career, even though he has a 26, 12, and 10, missed 4 free throws, had 7 turnovers, and just wasn't making the best decisions when he had the ball in his hands, taking weird shots. Even the last 3-pointer at the end, I thought he could have gotten a better look, although the Clippers did a great job contesting there in the final seconds. But yeah, man, Nikola Jokic didn't play his best game. Jamal Murray was pretty good. I mean, he was feeling under the weather today, had that long-sleeved shirt on there to try to keep himself, hot and ready to go. But outside of that, Michael Porter had a good response game, 15 points, 15 rebounds for Porter is huge. He had 6 offensive rebounds, which is something to watch going forward in the series because Denver out-rebounded the Clippers 59-37 and lost the game. That is crazy. The fact that they got out-rebounded by 22 and they still lost the game. But that's because the LA Clippers were just being so efficient when they had the ball in their hands, specifically when they got the ball to Kawhi Leonard, because, he was spectacular. Zubac's another good game, 16, 12, and 4. I thought James Harden was solid. They really didn't need a whole lot from James Harden in this game, more than he did. Norman Powell, I thought they tried to feature him a little too much to start the game. I thought in game 1 we didn't get enough Norman Powell, and to start this game, I thought we got a little too much Norman Powell. Like, he was the number 1 option, which he, has been at certain parts of this season. But when you got Kawhi and you got Harden, you just got to let them roll it out, and that's exactly what they did. And Kawhi showed why, when healthy, he makes the Clippers just on another level. And through 2 games, I mean, we've gotten 2 incredible thrillers. There's not really too many huge takeaways because these are 2 very good, talented teams that played 2 great games that came down to the wire. A couple things that you can look at for the first 2 games is obviously, the team that made the plays in the final minutes was the team that won the game. In game 1, it was Russell Westbrook knocking down threes, which he did again in this game. He had another good game. Forcing turnovers. Westbrook was huge for them winning game 1. In this game, it's Kawhi Leonard making the plays down the stretch, knocking down threes. He had the go-ahead 3 with under a minute to go. And then you have the Nuggets star players, Jokic struggling. Aaron Gordon struggling, shooting from the field. Jamal Murray had a good game. Westbrook was good, but at the end of the day, if most of the time, if your top player isn't playing, at his best, and the other team's is, then you're normally going to win the game, and that's exactly what happened with Kawhi Leonard with the 39 points. Man, I've just been so impressed with his performance. But getting back to what I was saying, the 2 things, Kawhi made the plays down the stretch in this game, but the second thing to look at was the turnover numbers, because in game 1, I'm pretty sure the number was that the LA Clippers had 20 turnovers. And that was a huge reason that they lost game 1 in overtime. They had 20 turnovers, and the Denver Nuggets, I believe, only had like 11. Yeah, that's right. 20-11 was the number for the turnovers. LA with 20, Denver with 11. You take a look at this game, and it was reversed exactly. Denver had 20 turnovers. LA had 11. Funny how that works. The team that turns the ball over the less, especially when it's like a 9 turnover difference, is going to win the game. And that's why the Clippers were able to, despite getting crushed on the boards, still got up more shots than the Denver Nuggets. And it also has to do with free throws too, which Denver got a lot of as well. But both teams, basically, both teams, despite, the turnover numbers, despite the rebounding deficiencies for the Clippers, basically had the same amount of possessions. And that's because they forced 20 turnovers from the Denver Nuggets. So 2 games into this series, it's been great. This is looking like it's going to come down to a 7-game series. The series will now shift to the Intuit Dome for games 3 and 4. It'll be the first time we get to see a playoff game in that huge arena where the Clippers have been great all season long. It's so huge that the Clippers were able to win a game on the road. They should have had game 1, but they take care of business in game 2. And it's so huge because now you have a victory. You go on your home floor. You just stole home court advantage from Denver, which is one of the toughest places to play. And now you go to your building where your role players should play better. Role players always play better at home. And the Clippers have some role players that have been good, but can certainly be a lot better going forward. When you take a look at a guy like Norman Powell, who was 5 for 14 from the field in this game after going 5 for 12 in game 1, he could be a lot better. Chris Dunn, I think, has been good defensively, but shooting the ball wise, they're going to keep leaving him open. He should be better going forward. Bogdan Bogdanović hasn't made a field goal yet. He should have a big game in one of these games, at home. Derek Jones Jr., Nick Batum, even Ben Simmons should play better at home. And that's where I get a little bit worried for the Nuggets side of things as we go to Denver, because Denver's playing very shallow. It's clear they're playing 6 to 7 guys max. Actual legit minutes. I think this game they went to a 9-man rotation, but they had like 3 players play like 7 minutes. Like DeAndre Jordan played 5 minutes. I'm glad he got to get a little bit of time out there. Jalen Pickett played 7. Peyton Watson only 13. And then the starters with Westbrook, play a majority of the minutes. That's how it was in game 1. While the Clippers, you're playing a legit 9-man rotation where everyone's getting, a decent amount of minutes, like 15 to 20 minutes, off the bench. And that's not the case for Denver. So how does that do? How will that, will there be fatigue as we go forward in the series for the Denver Nuggets, with the Clippers just being deeper overall and now going home where the role players should play better? So that's definitely something to watch. I definitely think this is going to set up for a 7-game series. I think they'll probably split the 2 games in Los Angeles, but either way, it has been a terrific series so far, and I really hope that it goes 7 games because Just getting these thrillers have been absolutely fantastic. So there's a look at your two games from last night, the two game twos. The two road teams evening up their series with Detroit and LA evening up their series at one game apiece. Tonight, 3 games going on here, 3 game twos. First up at 7 o'clock on NBA TV, game 2 between the Milwaukee Bucks and the Indiana Pacers after the Pacers steamrolled their way to a game 1 victory there. We will see if Damian Lillard is available for the game. There's been no word yet on if he is available to play. I'm going to check on his current status right now as I'm recording. He's been listed as questionable to return after not playing in about a month. So we'll see if Damian Lillard can come back there and try to help the Bucks, have that secondary score, because in game 1, that was a struggle. That was definitely a struggle. But on TNT, the doubleheader starting at 7:30, game 2 between Memphis and Oklahoma City after the Thunder beat the Grizzlies by an NBA playoff game 1 record, 51 points. Grizzlies will try to make some sort of response with the Thunder. Just so impressive in that game. And then the nightcap, the one that we'll all be watching at 10 p.m., Minnesota and the Lakers, game 2, after Minnesota in the shocker of the playoffs so far took game 1 in LA by 22 points. The Lakers, in a huge game, going to try to even up that series at a game apiece before the series shifts over to Minneapolis. So stay tuned for all those games. Stay tuned for later today when we have the full Run in the Paint podcast going up, where all 4 of us, me, Nick, Jackson, and Joey, are going to give our full reactions on all of the game 1s from over the weekend, and then you can hear my thoughts. Well, you just heard my thoughts on the game 2s between the Pistons-Knicks and the Clippers-Nuggets. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe for more NBA content. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next one.